Your life has purpose and potential. Do you see it? Sometimes unexpected circumstances become roadblocks that prevent us from truly living our purpose and seeing our potential. Join me as I share my journey towards overcoming the roadblocks that nearly prevented me from living my purpose and seeing my potential. Growing up, I had a best friend. His name was Eric. And Eric, he had this condition that left him paralyzed. And as a result, he had to be in a wheelchair. And he would never walk. And there's just something very special about Eric. Even though he was in a wheelchair and he was paralyzed, he always had this smile on his face. He was always so happy. It was as if he didn't even realize that he was in a wheelchair. The greatest moments was when he came over and my mom would put him on the floor and we would just play for hours. And we would laugh and just have a great time. And in those moments, it was like everything just fell away and life was normal. And one of the highlights of Eric's life was the camping trips that his parents would take him on every year. In fact, he got so excited that he would talk about these trips months before he even went on them. And I was excited for him as well. And tradition was he would call me right before his trip. And we would just talk and say goodbye. And he would tell me about his plans for the trip. And we were saying goodbye and we hung up the phone. And that would be the last time that I would talk to Eric. On Saturday that weekend, his parents tucked him into a sleeping bag in his tent, and he told him how much he loved them. And then he said something interesting as they were leaving. He said goodbye. And during the night, Eric had passed away, and his parents found him the next morning. The biggest thing that Eric taught me was we have a choice. We can either choose to allow our circumstances to dictate how we live in a negative way, or we can choose to rise above that, and we can choose to be happy. We can choose to have a life of purpose. Eric's life definitely had a lot of purpose, and it was something that I wanted for a long time. I finally got there, but it did take a while. But I'm so thankful for Eric. I'm so thankful for his friendship, for what he taught me. And I do miss him. He was truly one of my best friends. Eric learned how to live above his circumstances and to live a life full of joy. But for me, there would be an internal struggle that I would have to learn how to overcome. So part of the internal struggle that I was talking about is just this beginning stages of anger and bitterness. Everything on the outside looked really good. The surgeries were beginning to work. I was able to begin walking.
But it was really what was going on inside of me that would be the biggest battle. And the reason for this battle was because as kids, what we do is we dream about what it is we want to become. And typically what we want to become are policemen and firemen and astronauts and all these things that I just knew I could not be. And so I began to wonder, well, who am I and what can I be? You see, my identity was so caught up in my physical limitations that I couldn't see beyond those. And as time went on, there began this pain inside of me and this anger and this bitterness. The problem was I didn't know how to deal with this. I didn't know how to let it out in a constructive way. And so it came out in ways that I'm not very proud of. And it began to consume my life so much that I could not see anything other than anger and bitterness. Pretty soon I started to take this anger out on people. And if you got in my way, the chances were pretty good that I was going to say something that was pretty hurtful. And I would begin to lash out at my teachers, at my family, at my parents. The truth was, I was lost. And there was a point where this started to cause me to suffer in school as well. Because my mindset was, well, I'm not going to be anything, so why should I even try? Why try? And I barely made it out of elementary school. I barely made it out of middle school. And I never made it out of high school. I ended up dropping out of high school. But the anger got to a point where in my class there was a child in a wheelchair. And I thought it would be fun one day to offer to push him outside the class. And as we went outside, I knew that there was this incline. And I thought it'd be fun to push him to the edge and just let him go. And all I did was laugh the whole time. It was pretty sad. But you see, again, I didn't know, or I didn't have a proper outlet for my anger, and so I took it out on other people. They didn't deserve that. It wasn't their fault. And I'm not proud of that story, but that's just how my life was. If my life was going to be miserable, then I'm going to make everybody else's life miserable as well. And what made matters worse for me was, at a very young age, my dad left. And so on top of everything else, here I was trying to deal with all of this without having a dad around. And so that just added to the anger and to the bitterness. And when I got old enough to really start thinking about the meaning of purpose, I honestly had no idea what that meant for my life and for me. And that took me on this journey of just beginning to ask questions that I just could not answer. And it got to the point in my life where the pain was really starting to add up, and the loneliness, and just knowing that people were making fun of me as well, because as a kid, look, kids don't know any better. They don't really understand. So the best way that they deal with that is by making fun and teasing. So I had to deal with that. And so that really contributed to me not knowing who I was. And I remember one day coming home from school. I was in high school at this point. I was at the lowest point of my life. And I remember walking into the kitchen and pulling out my mom's butcher knife. And I put it to my throat. And right as I was ready to jab it into my throat, my mom and sister walked through the door. Them walking through the door saved my life. Because if they wouldn't have come in, I would have ended it right there. Because I thought that was the only way out. And I remember dropping the knife to the floor, and I remember falling to the floor and just crying and saying, I hate my life. I hate it. I don't get this. Why did this happen to me? Why am I going through this? And at the time, we had a youth pastor that I was beginning to build this relationship with. And so my mom called him, and he came and picked me up. And we went to this park, and we sat down on the grass for a couple hours and just really talked about life, talked about what was going on with me. And I remember he said this to me. He said, Jeff, you do have purpose. Your life does have meaning. You just have to be willing to live it. I had no idea what he meant by that. I really did not. And it would take another 3 years for me to really understand what he meant. But here's the best part. I did. I found it. I found my purpose. I found the answers that I'd been looking for. And as soon as I let go of the control of wanting to know answers that I couldn't have answers for. As soon as I let go of those, as soon as I embraced God and He came into my life, He began to show me that my purpose is my story. All the things that I have been through, all of the surgeries, all of the struggles, all of the pain, that was my purpose. That was the thing that I was going to live for. And what's so awesome is, as I have begun to live that purpose, I've seen people's lives changed by this story. And you know what? Man, that makes everything worth it. It makes it so worth it. Because I know that if I can help one person overcome their struggles, to help them find their purpose, to help them live that purpose, there's nothing greater than that. And so I'm thankful. I'm thankful for everything that I've been through. I'm thankful that I finally saw and recognized my purpose. And through it all, I've chose to live that purpose. It's not a perfect walk. There's days when I have to remind myself of my purpose. It doesn't mean I don't struggle. It doesn't mean that I don't go through things that make me question. But overall, I do know my purpose. And I just want to remind you that you too have a purpose. You too have a life. You have a story to tell. And your story just might be the story that somebody else needs to listen to help them get through whatever struggles they're going through. It's the greatest thing we can do, is to share our stories. And I believe this for you. I know this for you. Just like I overcame, I know you can overcome as well.
My path to finding my purpose was long and difficult, but I did find it, and now it was time to find my true potential.